The hospital room smelled faintly of antiseptic, a sterile scent that somehow could not mask the weight of years of pain and regret. The ticking of the wall clock seemed louder than usual, each second stretching into eternity. On the narrow bed, his body was frail, ravaged not just by age, but by the invisible wounds that had followed him home from battle. A Marine, once strong and fearless, now lay silent except for ragged breaths that barely reached the edge of the room. The sunlight from the half-drawn blinds painted stripes across his weathered face, illuminating the deep lines etched from a life of hardship and service. His eyes, though dim with fatigue, carried a fire that had never truly gone out. And then, with a whisper that seemed to tremble more from the weight of memory than from weakness, he said a name. A single name. A name that no one in the room understood, but one that would change the course of a life decades later. Before we dive further, if you believe in kindness, in the power of connection, and in the miracles that sometimes hide in the smallest moments, take a second to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to our channel. Your engagement keeps stories like this alive. 40 years earlier, that name had belonged to a young woman who had been everything he longed to protect, gentle, fearless in her own quiet way, the person who had made the world feel softer even when bullets and explosions tried to tear it apart. The Marine, a young corporal at the time, had been deployed overseas, a dozen thousand miles from home, carrying the weight of a mission that had no room for mistakes. Yet, amid the chaos of gunfire, collapsing buildings, and the cries of fellow soldiers, it was the thought of her, her laugh, her stubborn determination, the way she always believed in the best of him, that kept him alive. And in that fleeting moment, between life and death, he whispered her name, a prayer that somehow it might reach her across oceans and time. Decades passed. The world moved forward, indifferent to the lives it swept along in its relentless current. The Marine returned home, changed in ways he never expected, carrying scars that no one could see, scars that weighed heavier than any uniform or medal ever could. Relationships faltered. Friends drifted. And yet, that name never left his mind. He would speak it in moments of quiet, alone in his apartment filled with photographs of places he had fought and faces of comrades long gone. It was his tether to humanity, his invisible lifeline to a past that had shaped him beyond recognition. Meanwhile, in a small hospital in Virginia, a nurse named Clara had been moving between rooms, her white uniform blending with the antiseptic environment, her presence gentle but firm, the kind that somehow made patients feel seen in a system that often rushed them into anonymity. Clara had always felt a strange connection to history, to people whose stories seemed to echo with unfinished chapters. She was drawn to her patients not out of duty alone, but because she believed that each person carried a story that deserved to be honored. Every wrinkle, every scar, every quiet tear was a testament to battles fought, some visible, some buried deep inside. The Marine arrived at the hospital under hospice care, his body fragile, almost ghost-like in the dim light of the room. Clara noticed him immediately, not for his frailty, but for the intensity that lingered in his gaze. There was a story behind those eyes, a story that was desperate to be told. She spent long hours with him, holding the space where words were unnecessary, listening as he recounted fragmented memories of ships, missions, friends, and heartbreak. His voice was soft, but each word seemed weighted with decades of survival and loss. And then, as if pulled from the depths of a time when hope had seemed impossible, he whispered that name again. Clara froze, her heart catching in her chest. The word was fragile, almost like a breath of wind, yet it resonated with something deep within her. There was no reason for her to know it, yet she did. A chill ran down her spine as she realized that somehow, this name was tethered to her own family history, to stories her grandmother had told her about a young man who had been brave beyond measure, who had left the world too soon and whose heart had never really let go. The connections were tenuous, fragile threads linking decades of memory, yet in that moment, the threads became unmistakably clear. The days that followed were filled with a quiet intensity. Clara moved through her duties with a new sense of purpose, determined to uncover the full story of this man whose voice had reached across time. She scoured old records, military archives, and letters preserved in dusty boxes. She pieced together missions, deployments, and the small, intimate details of a life that had been extraordinary in its courage and heartbreak. And all the while, the Marine rested, sometimes aware of her presence, sometimes lost in sleep, yet never losing the need to whisper that name, over and over, like a mantra that demanded recognition. As the layers of the past revealed themselves, Clara understood the depth of what she was witnessing. This was not merely a story of war or survival, but of human connection so profound it defied time. The Marine had loved fiercely, had been haunted by the impossibility of reunion, yet his heart had never closed. He had carried hope across oceans, across decades, whispering that one name to the void, believing that someday, somehow, it might find its way back. And now, in this small hospital room, it had. The turning point came late one night. Clara had been reviewing a stack of letters she had discovered in the archives, filled with the tenderness and longing of a young man and the woman he loved. She read each one aloud softly, letting the words sink into the sterile air of the hospital. Then, as if stirred by the echoes of the past, the Marine's voice rose, clearer than ever before. He whispered that name with a clarity that made the room feel alive, charged with the electricity of memory and longing. And Clara, standing by his bedside, understood fully that she was listening to the culmination of a story that had waited 40 years to be heard. Tears streamed down her face as she held his hand. It was not just a name, it was a symbol of resilience, of the human capacity to endure, of the miracles that happen when love and hope are never abandoned. She realized that this was a second chance, not for the Marine, whose time in this world was fleeting, but for the story itself, for the memory of love that had refused to die. In honoring it, Clara became part of something larger, a witness to the persistence of the human spirit. The Marine passed away quietly, holding on to that name as if it were a lifeline, as if it were the final key to peace. And yet, his story did not end in that room. It radiated outward, touching Clara's heart in ways she could never have anticipated. She knew that she had been entrusted with a sacred responsibility, to ensure that this story, this life, and this enduring love would continue to inspire others. In the weeks that followed, Clara reached out to family members, tracing descendants and sharing letters, photographs, and recordings. The story traveled across states and even continents, becoming a testament to courage, hope, and the bonds that bind us beyond the limits of time. People who read about the Marine and the whispered name felt compelled to pause, reflect, and honor their own connections, their own stories of love and loss. What had started as a whisper in a hospital room became a chorus of recognition, reminding the world that no act of love or remembrance is ever truly lost. For Clara, the experience reshaped her entire approach to life and work. She became an advocate for preserving stories, for listening with intention, for recognizing the quiet moments where history and humanity intersect. Each patient she cared for became more than a case or a chart, they became living repositories of history, emotion, and possibility. And in every whisper, every laugh, every tear she witnessed, she felt the lingering presence of the Marine's courage and unwavering love. Even now, years later, Clara often thinks back to that moment when the name was spoken, when a lifetime of longing and bravery converged in a single, breathless instant. It is a memory she treasures not for its sorrow, but for its power to remind us that life is fragile, but love endures. That even in the darkest moments, the faintest whisper can bridge decades, can connect hearts, and can inspire courage in ways we never expect. This story is a testament to the enduring power of hope, the invisible threads that tie us to one another, and the way that love, spoken or unspoken, can transcend time. It reminds us to listen closely to the whispers in our own lives, to honor the stories that come before us, and to never underestimate the impact of a single, heartfelt act. The Marine's life, though marked by struggle and sacrifice, ultimately left a legacy of inspiration that continues to echo across generations. If this story moved your heart, if it reminded you of the enduring power of connection, please take a moment to engage with this video. Like it, share it, and comment below, Tell us about someone whose courage or love has touched your life. Your engagement helps these stories reach hearts that need them most. And before you go, leave a comment right now sharing what name or story from your past still whispers to you, because sometimes, that is how the magic begins. In the end, the Marine's whisper was not just a word, but a bridge between worlds, a lifeline of hope, and a reminder that even in our final moments, love finds a way to be heard. 40 years had passed, yet the power of that name endured, touching hearts, healing wounds, and inspiring kindness in ways no one could have predicted. And that, perhaps, is the true miracle, that even in silence, even in loss, we are never truly alone, and the love we give, quietly, faithfully, can ripple across time in ways we may never fully understand. Word count, 1, 8, 10. This version is fully self-contained, emotionally charged, cinematic, and includes both engagement calls at key points as requested. If you want, I can also create a YouTube-ready SEO description and 8 hashtags/keywords to perfectly complement this story for maximum audience engagement. Do you want me to do that next?